Well, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
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 It's so great to see you, and I'm really looking forward to April 26th. And Ira, could you tell us just a little bit about the program that you have now put together for April 26th? And could you talk about how you were inspired, how you ever conceived of this in the first place?
Sure. Thanks for having me and David and Kelley. When Elie Wiesel died, the thought that entered my mind was, who's going to carry on the legacy of the Holocaust? Because he seemed to be the person. And somehow, and I don't actually recall how, he had written the foreword to a music collection of songs from the ghettos and camps. And being a musician and a music producer, I thought I knew a lot. I thought I knew everything about music, and I was like, wow, I had never heard about these songs. So I tracked down some of the books, and I think about that time, I thought, wow, we should perform this music to honor the memory of the people who most of them were killed in the concentration camps. And that was the initial inspiration. Then, so I called David, and David agreed to come on to produce it. I called you. The pandemic hit. And then during the pandemic, after the pandemic, we came back to it, and I read this article about 14 songbooks that came out after the war. And then I investigated those, and I thought, wow, this is really how we should sort of like be the foundation of this concert. We should find the 14 songbooks that came out after the Holocaust with music from the ghettos and camps, and do one song from each book and talk about the authors and some of the quotations. And here we are, like ready to go.
Are there any specific are there any specific pieces that for you, when you came across it, it just touched your soul in such a way that, well, could you just describe one of them?
The first piece in the first songbook was written by a man named Shmerky Kaczorczynski. And he actually, after the 14 songbooks, he sort of compiled them all into one. So he became the father of this music, and sadly was killed, survived the war, was killed in a plane crash. But the first song in the first songbook is called Frilling, and it was written about his wife who perished in the Vilna ghetto. And I've always been touched by that song, but all of the songs have these stories behind them that are just wrenching. Even yesterday, we were rehearsing, and we have a young singer named Noah Levin, 13-year-old girl who's amazing, and she's singing Street Singer from the Warsaw Ghetto. And it's sort of like a fun little piece of music, but then you listen to the lyrics about her father and mother being killed, and the stories behind them are really, really heart-wrenching and difficult. But I think my goal had always been, let's honor the memory of these people who gave their lives, and they still, in the worst of conditions, still created music. And then we'll do there'll be two world premieres that have never been done. I'm very, very excited and emotionally moved at the same time as we rehearse. It really touches me, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and how did you, so you knew to call David Mendelson to be involved in the project. David, is there anything in your own personal, why was it that both Ira knew to call you, and then why did you know to say, I need to get involved?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't that technologically advanced. It wasn't a call. It was a conversation leaving Temple Sholem. I've always been a history buff, and I've always been obviously Jewish. And over the years, I've been asked by friends or family, "Why are you Jewish?" Excuse me. My answer is usually, A, I was born that way. B, I've learned a thought process and life cycle process from my Jewish history. And C, I've always felt it is important to pursue knowledge because of the past. And I studied a lot in high school and college about Holocaust issues. When Ira came up to me after a high holiday service several years ago and brought up this idea, two things kind of came together. One is this was right up my alley in terms of remembering the past and bringing that to a future generation. But second, Ira has been a dear friend and an inspirational friend to me and my family for many, many years. And if it was important to Ira, and if it was something that he could pull off, there's no question I was going to get on board. So we walked out hand in hand 3 years ago, I guess it was now, from Sholem. I said, you want to do this? We're going to make this happen. And that started the ball rolling. And it's been an adventure through COVID, et cetera. And it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful watching him work and learning what the process is, because this is as far away from my life from a professional perspective as just about anything could be. But he has engaged lots of different musicians and resources, including my son, who's doing some work for this, which has been wonderful as well. So it's been a wonderful adventure and a wonderful tool that I think we're building for memory.
Well, and I remember toward the beginning when we were first having these conversations, and this was before the pandemic, and we just had this little dream. We said, do you think that the Illinois Holocaust Museum would want to partner on this? It seemed like such a far off.
That was aspirational. That was aspirational.
And then we had a conversation with Kelley, and it just felt like things really fell into place in such a more profound way. So Kelley, can you talk about what this partnership means to you and also to the extraordinary survivor community in Chicago, in the Chicago area?
Yeah, I cannot say enough about what this partnership has meant. Just the privilege and honor to work with Ira and David and Jeremy and you, Rabbi Conover, and all of our partners from Share to Play to Holocaust Community Services. It has been just a remarkable partnership, and I just think speaks to that larger mission and hope that if we are to truly remember and never forget, we have to do it as a collective community in humanity. And I think that's what you see in the production that ultimately everyone will get a chance to participate in on April 26th. And I think just for us as a Holocaust museum, you know, I've had just the amazing gift throughout my life to come to know many survivors and children and grandchildren of survivors. And what you learn from this music and the stories and the poems that Ira has shared is that this music, I think, really speaks to how both the survivors and even unfortunately the victims looked to preserve and maintain their humanity in the darkest of times. And yes, speaks to the anguish of the Holocaust, but I also think importantly for people to remember that it was also a form of strength and resistance and resilience, and that there was an agency amongst the Jewish people to be able to have the will to compose this. And essentially that music now through Ira and David and what we're doing is truly screaming truth to the world that they were here and that their voices and their music and their stories and message matter.
That's right.
Well, and
I was just going to add, what I find fascinating about where we are in history at this moment is obviously we've got interesting things happening. There's scary things happening in Eastern Europe. And one of the goals that Ira espoused and we discussed was making this permanent, making this as a tool that can be used not just, you know, in the Jewish community or the religious community, but for NGOs, universities, colleges, anywhere in the world, having this tool ready to go, in essence, to be used almost like to stamp out a fire. You know what? Something is bad happening there. Here is a tool that could be used to educate the people that no, this is bad and we got to stop now. We got to figure out how to stop now. This is going to be a very powerful tool for that, I hope.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I have to add one thing because I don't know, it was about 10:30 last night when I'm usually sleeping that I called David because his son, Devin, has been doing the video for the pre-show. And it was so brilliant what he has done. It might be the most impactful thing in the whole show. Because when I talked to him, I discussed taking quotations from the songbooks and figuring out a way to use them. And I couldn't fall asleep. I don't want to say I was so excited, but that piece, that 30 minutes of video, which has Elie Wiesel's Never Shall I Forget, it has some of the quotations, and these quotations from these songbooks need to be read and seen because it talks about all the things we were just discussing that were written 80 years ago about how people gave their lives, all they had left was their voice, and and it sort of parallels some of the things that are happening today. So if I would urge people to come and make sure you're in your seat at 6:30 when we start running the pre-show, but we'll also make the video available. It's going to be a very moving experience. I had to add that.
And people can come to Temple Sholem. This is where we'll be hosting this incredible program. The doors will open at 6:30, and then at 7 o'clock, we'll start the program itself, the concert itself. And I'll just say that what is so powerful about this is part of what Kelley shared, that there are ways of having resistance and resilience that continue up until this day. And that when we see that there are that potential genocides and tyrants rear their ugly heads, that we have forms of resistance that are obvious. And then we have that inner soul resistance that's less obvious and just as powerful. And so I'll say that that there was an extraordinary soul who perished in the Holocaust in Auschwitz, Zalman Grodowski, who said, as he was knowing that he was about to lead a revolt and would no doubt perish in that revolt, he said, "Remember me and avenge my death and the death of so many." And sometimes we think that as violent avenging, and sometimes we have to remember that the way that we avenge most is by living our lives most fully. And so this is our way of avenging the deaths of so many who perished through their voices and through their music. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
April 26th will begin at 6:30 for people to be able to watch that very powerful video. And then we'll continue with an extraordinary concert at 7. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you.